Alrighty everyone, hello, and welcome back to another episode of my and also kinda B-Locks nonsense. He doesn't want to come down, but that's okay, because I'm playing 4D chess. And he went in his little hoo house. And now you can see him in his little hoo house, yeah, baby. He will defend his hoo house to the death. Hi, baby, with your hoo house. Oh, no. Haha. We got him, boys. No, we don't. Anyway, funny story. The other day, one of my students asked me. They said, "Sarah, what does it mean that you're a witch?" And of course, they know that I do witchcraft because part of my hi, meet your professor is things like, "Hi, I'm a fantasy writer. I'm also an occultist." Blah blah blah. These things kind of go hand in hand, right? But I don't really talk about it outside of that. I just say that's weird fun facts about me, haha, and then we move on. Before we get into all that though, once again, welcome, hello, my name is Sarah Streisand, and I am a content creator, educator, writer, Christian witch, and specifically a writer of this book right here, Discovering Christian Witchcraft, which is a book about exactly what it means to be a Christian witch, how we reconcile that with all the many verses in the Bible that you might be Googling right now, and all kinds of fun history from the time of the Bible's writing up to now. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, definitely go ahead and check this out. And if you are new here, again, welcome. If you like all this kind of content and all this kind of stuff, definitely go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell. And if you are not new here, welcome back and thank you for coming back. And a quick reminder to everyone that if you want to see these videos 2 weeks early and ad-free, you can always head over to my Patreon where I post all of these videos and a lot more over there. Now, the first thing I had to ask my student when she asked me this was, okay, well, when you say the word witch, what do you think of? What comes to mind? We could start there. And she said that when she thinks of the word witch, the thing that comes up in her head is the movie Charmed and all of the fun stuff going on in there. I feel like Charmed is more of a movie for the Gen X, early millennials. I've actually never seen Charmed. I might have to go watch it just to see what all the fuss is about, because I've seen clips from it, I've seen people talk about it, but I've never actually seen it myself. But from what I imagine Charmed is about, I'm just kind of nope. Witchcraft does not work like it does in the movies as much as we wish it might. It'd be cool if it worked like in the movies, don't get me wrong, but it does not. And I think it's high time people be a little honest about what witchcraft actually is, what it does, what it can do, right? I mean, you get people all the time saying things like, well, if witchcraft works, do a hex on me or something, or if witchcraft works, turn me into a frog, or if witchcraft works, why have you not won the lottery yet, and all other kinds of goofy, silly things. The reality is that witchcraft is a lot more about the inner self and the everyday immediate and the, basics of keeping oneself handled so that they can do their shit physically than it actually is about anything like you might see in Charmed or Hocus Pocus or any other movie with witches in it. Though, of course, we have to, pay mind to what people thought witches could do in the first place, right? There is no shortage of stories, myths, and other such things about how witches have this strange ability to turn into animals at night, to, fly out of their body and possess people or haunt people, to, dance around with demons and conjure all kinds of nasty results. Beyond that, right, from all the way to books like the Malleus Maleficarum of the Middle Ages, which talks about how to identify a witch and what they can do, to fucking modern books like this goofy ass shit that we've talked about before, this Out of the Devil's Cauldron nonsense. People genuinely believe that witches are just out here for fun, just doing the thing. Doing that stereotypical sitting over a cauldron and just kind of trying to ruin everybody's lives and all this other kinds of shite, right? Trying to go fly out and astral project and oppress and harass people, all these other kinds of things. Generally, no. Generally, that's not what people are doing. And a lot of the stuff made up in books like the Middle Ages, grimoires, and, clerical manuals for finding heresy and witchcraft and shit are just nonsense. They're made of complete and utter nonsense. People weren't doing these kinds of things. The more accurate kind of witchcraft you're going to see people doing, or at least what we would call witchcraft today, and what they certainly tried to condemn and prosecute as witchcraft then, is stuff like taking the host, the Eucharist from church and sprinkling it in their yard to protect the cows. This was considered a superstitious and improper use of the host or desecration of the host, and it could land you in some hot water if you got caught, right? Because people would put it in their mouth, keep it under their tongue, and then take it with them outside of church and go do whatever with it. There's also a lot of conspiracies about the Black Mass, right, where people would take the host and then go do some kind of like satanic evil ritual where they just kind of beat up this fucking transmuted wafer, and as if they're actually, you know, beating up Jesus or something. This is more of satanic panic now that we're getting into, so we're not going to get too much into that. But, you know, you've got people making up the most zany, weird conspiracies about stuff that witches do. On a regional and cultural level, too, we got to remember that a lot of the wacky stuff witches were said to be able to do comes from the fact that sometimes bad shit would just happen, and there was absolutely no explanation as to why. So it was believed that witches could do things like curse your crops to randomly wilt, or bring hail, or poison wells, or even steal the milk out of your cow. My people have many stories of how their cows were producing milk just fine, and then suddenly there was none, and that bitch Petra down the road who has no cows suddenly had a bunch of milk. How the fuck is that possible? Petra must be a witch. Witchcraft has had all kinds of time to, like, just excite the most fanciful of fancies in people's imagination. But the kind of witchcraft that we do now, that we would call witchcraft today, that was not called witchcraft then, the kind of cunning folk stuff, right, the curse-breaking things, they don't really do things like that. They counteract things like that. They do instead bring luck or something like that in ways that are not, like, obvious and crazy. Because why would it? Well, if you're a Christian, you might imagine that magic could do some crazy stuff, actually. When you get that question, why would this magic get anything crazy done? Well, if you remember when Jesus says that faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains, and when he says that all the things I've done you can do, and the things he's done included stuff like raising people from the dead, turning water into wine, and everything else in between, I suppose it's not too far off to imagine that if Christians who have faith can do these kinds of wonders, then witches who have faith, traditionally in the devil or something, might also accomplish some crazy shit like that. Likewise, the stories of the saints have shown saints to do some crazy stuff. Stuff that looks suspiciously like the works of witches, actually. You've got stories from this book right here, right, of saints, cursing people to fall down dead on the spot, cursing rivers to run dry, fields to just completely die out and go rancid. All these other kinds of things that, again, people would accuse witches of doing. And yet, because of the faith of these saints, they were doing these as miracles. And because they were saints and holy men, it was thought that God was co-signing all the calamity they were bringing on fuck-ass people. And so there comes a point where, as witches, we have to look at ourselves and say, what is actually the limit of magical potential? What does this mean? What does it look like when we do magic? When we do something like, say, a money spell, why aren't we winning the lottery? Why is it that we only instead find, extra hours at work or something else like that? Well, it's a good question, but one might stop to consider that maybe it's because doing a lot of high, intense magic, stuff that is absolutely insane and bonkers and noteworthy, will put a big spotlight on you, put you in danger, and also take up a lot of your energy, and also maybe not be very good for you in the first place. I, as a Christian, absolutely could ask, God to give me $1 million. I could do all the spells in the world for specifically $1 million. But since my magic is tied to God, and therefore tied to what God wants for me and His will, one has to ask themselves if getting $1 million just deposited into their hand is appropriate, right? If I suddenly had $1 million and therefore had no reason to work anymore, would that mean that all the work I'm doing here would suddenly disappear? Would that mean I would feel no compulsion to get on the internet and do all of the work that I do? Would I just sit and stagnate and waste away? Right? Would I just kind of stop doing what I do? Probably not entirely, because, of course, I can't really sit still. I love my work and I do it for a reason, not just money, but because I love it. But I definitely wouldn't be putting as much into it, right? I'd probably be a little bit more la with it and a little bit more lax because, well, if you're not doing it for money, then really it becomes kind of optional, right? Not entirely. Again, I would still obviously be doing this work, writing my books and all these other things, but it would certainly make it easier for me to just slide into complacency. It'd make it a lot easier for me to say, oh, I'll get to it another time, and then just never get to it, right? It would reward a lot of bad habits and make me realize very quickly how much just having that kind of money can bring me straight into sloth. But that does not mean that I have not done stuff that is miraculous by the will, grace, and strength of God, right? I mean, I say I did it. Really, it's God that's done it, because what the fuck? When I first started this entire thing that I'm doing right now, I had quit a perfectly stable job, 9 to 5 with benefits, to do stuff that I had no idea how I was going to make work or turn into income proper that would actually support me and a fiance who at the time was in between jobs, right? So it was the toughest situation one could be in, and yet the magic I put in, the time I put in, the effort I put in, made a seedbed for God to actually bring down the miracle, right? When I was doing my money spells and asking God to sustain me, that created the space, the invitation for his magic to come down in full and bring me the open doors, the opportunities, the reach, the spread, the everything else to get to a point where this is my job. A job that I love, a job that I deeply enjoy, and something that is nothing short of miraculous, because how the hell is this even possible? I don't even know. Maybe I'm not flying around house to house causing chaos. Maybe I'm not stealing, friggin' eggs from under the chickens of the people down the road with sheer telepathy. But damn, when I look at what I've been able to get, what I have obtained through the grace of God, through the power of God, through the will of God, and tapping into his direction, his advice, his very power, it feels miraculous. It feels impossible, yet possible. And you'll see a lot of people online, right? A lot of people online, they'll kind of beef up the aesthetic of their spells. They will make it seem very grand, very huge, very, powerful. When, if you really look at it, a lot of times it's just plates of like candles and a ton of herbs that they're throwing around. But they put all this up, they dress all this up, they film it in certain ways and do certain things with it to really play up this image of power that, of course, when everyone else believes it's powerful, kind of feeds into it as well, right? And they do this to seem like this magic can do like these insane, crazy things. And you know what? Maybe for some of them it can. Maybe for some of them crazy, insane things do happen, like the ones that have happened to me with my magic. Sure. But generally, when I think of what magic can and cannot do, I think of magic as something that's more about the inner work, more about the inner strength, and less about doing all these flashy, crazy stunts out in public, right? I think of, spells that don't make gigantic booms that no one can deny, right? But I think of magic more as something that is quiet shifts, quiet nudges, quiet guides, so that you can get to a spot you want to get to without people taking note and trying to knock it all down, right? Most importantly, I think of magic more as really just medieval therapy. Therapy for people who did not have a concept of psychology and therapy yet. You see it often, honestly, right? You see it often in the folk spells and everything else, how much of these rituals and things really just seem to be an expression of one's anxiety, compulsive behaviors. You have no knowledge or no control over whether or not a hailstorm comes down and destroys your crops, but if you do this ritual, you spin in a circle 3 times and clap your hands and hop on one foot and ring a bell, well, then the hail will go away. When I look at a lot of the witchcraft stuff, it really just kind of sounds like, any of my OCD logic in action. But also, I know that there is energy and there is intent behind it, and I know that energy is real and that we can direct it and we can move it and we can do some things with it. We can affect our environment with it, just like we can physically push things around. We can energetically and magically push things around too. So, magic, maybe, if you really, really try at it, maybe it is something that can just throw a thunderbolt down on someone's house. Sure. But generally, I don't think that's what anyone thinks is going to happen when they start busting out basil and some incense. I think magic, if we're being honest with ourselves, is more capable of doing things like opening doors, attracting, people to us or opportunities to us, giving us the courage to seize those opportunities once we see them, putting us on the lookout for them. I think magic is more about centering our frame of mind, and what it can do is organize us, calm us, center us, and put us more in the mental position to make the life better. I think it's something that connects you with the divine. I think it's something that connects you with yourself. I think it's something that grounds you so much more than, just kind of hoping for the best, or even for a lot of church services, if I'm being real with you. Magic to me is something that can protect us spiritually. I don't worry about demons. I don't worry about any kind of weird spirits or spooks coming around. I don't worry about any of this stuff. Because I know and I have the means to protect myself spiritually. I think it's something that gives us a better appreciation for nature, because we understand in an animistic sense that nature around us has souls, has presence, has, personality, are allies in this whole thing, our siblings in creation. I think magic amplifies our voice and our courage, and gives us the better ability to advocate for ourselves and others. I think magic and witchcraft can do so much, but I don't think they can do stuff like in Charmed or in Hocus Pocus. I don't think anyone can ride on a broomstick with it. I think that, sure, maybe if you really try really hard, you could raise the dead, maybe, but at the same time, maybe it's a mark of my own lack of faith to say that, can you though? Is that possible? I don't know. It's conflicting. You want to say no because that sounds insane, but then you want to say, well, if Jesus said we could though, why the fuck not? And I definitely think that even if I'm challenging my own sense of faith and such, I don't think I'm going to try to insert myself into a medical situation and use magic to revive anyone anytime soon, because that seems like a touch irresponsible, right? If you're not 100% sure of your ability to do something like that. But maybe that's why when I post things like my day in the life or anything else, it's just not as witchy maybe as one would expect. Maybe that's why when I am on a moon ritual day, right, a new moon or something, I don't have to pull out all the bells and whistles. A prayer and a focused idea and energy work is more than enough, Because magic to me is not something that is for big bombastic stuff like this. To me, the way God currently works in the world is much more mysterious than that. And it feels like that's kind of just not the vibe in the first place, to be all big and flashy and ridiculous like that. It feels more like it's kind of a move in silence thing, to me at least. But if anyone has had any crazy experiences with magic, I invite y'all to tell me down below in the comments. I certainly would love to hear them, and I would love to hear all of your more, personal ways of dealing with magic as well. What it does for you, what it can do for you, what you use it for. So let me know, and I will see you next time for some more conversation on these kinds of topics. See ya!